not resolved, it will have a devastating impact on Florida agriculture. Among other users, it'll have a devastating impact on municipalities, on counties, on anybody who's running a wastewater treatment plant, on anybody who's running a utility, but agriculture in particular not having the ability to go wring any more savings out of their operation, and certainly not having an ability to go leverage any more profits from their buyers, it's just going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And so the climate change issues at the federal level, the nutrient load issues at the state level, I view as being two of the most important public policy debates going on that will impact waste streams, that will impact ag production practices, that will impact that pillar of our economy here in Florida. And so as you move forward in the next couple of days with your summit of how can we best utilize technology to solve these problems, I hope that those two issues move to the top of your list because government is plowing forward demanding some answers that there's just not good scientific data to provide yet, and that's unfortunate. So with that, I'm gonna just stop and throw it open to questions. If that's okay, Richard, do we have time for questions?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? You're right. I mean, I remember when the first TMDL standard came out, rainwater was a pollutant, but because it had a higher load than was allegedly allowed under the first draft for Lake Okeechobee. The same is true for this new nutrient standard. It fails to recognize that there are differences between lakes in Florida, and there are huge differences between spring-fed lakes in north central Florida or the Panhandle and high tannin, cypress pond lakes that are maybe even naturally higher in nutrient loads as part of a natural filtration system where that particular lake happens to be the liver for the Kissimmee River system. Lake Hancock in Polk County is an example of that. Like Apopka is another example of that. Of course, mankind added lots of other issues to that as well. But there certainly are vast differences, vast natural differences between the lakes, and treating them as one is not based in science. It's based in politics or something else, and that's unfortunate. So the answer to your question is, I believe we have to find a way to suspend this new order on the newest nutrient load, and we have to continue using NRCS programs and other programs in the Farm Bill that we've tried to expand to get more EQIP type dollars and cost sharing to these dairies, and in Florida's case it is mostly dairies, to help them make these upfront investments that are very, very expensive. These capital improvements that are extraordinarily expensive, and it's got to be a social investment in those particular firms. If you are concerned about having locally grown food, then you're probably not too crazy about having your milk trucked in from New Mexico, and that's your option if you run the dairy industry out of the Lake Okeechobee region, and that's your option if you run the dairy industry out of the Swanee River Valley. So we've got to figure out a way to solve that problem, because the outcome is that you will trade a dairy industry around the northern rim of Lake Okeechobee for housing developments. And so then you have septic issues, you have turf grass fertilization issues, you have, I mean, you're trading you're trading down instead of trading up. And that's what we have to have people understand better. There's no question but that the Department of Agriculture and the ag industry have to do a better job of bringing the consumers back in. And one of the things I've talked about is putting the school lunch program under the Department of Agriculture instead of the Department of Education. I mean, so that you have an immediate access to fresh fruits and vegetables that we can get into our school system with one phone call instead of 47 phone calls, where you have a load of berries in the Plant City market that just barely missed grade, and we can get them into Hillsborough or Sarasota County schools, or blueberries that are in the same boat, and things, you know, beans coming out of the glades, and mangoes and papayas. And when you do that, number one, you're introducing kids to fresh fruits and vegetables that most studies would say they're not getting at home. You're doing our part to fight childhood obesity, and you're getting an opportunity to have a daily teachable moment about where our food and fiber comes from, instead of one day a year as part of an ag in the classroom deal that's only, not just one day a year, but only for one grade. And so I think that's some of the things I've thought about doing to try and solve the problem you're talking about. Changing the name to the Department of Food is not something I'd given a whole lot of thought to. But it's not to say that we shouldn't always be looking for ways to help people reconnect with the land, and help them understand that a lot of these things that sound really good are perfectly acceptable for wealthy individuals who can afford to pay $5 or $6 or $7 a gallon for milk. But that at the end of the day, if we are still going to spend the smallest portion of our disposable income in the world on food and have an abundance of it, you're going to have production agriculture. And so, you know, the people who say that we need to, you know, there's a Nick Kristof column in the last couple of days that talked about how we need to return to the family farm that had a mixture of, you know, a few chickens, a few pigs, a couple of cows, a couple of beef cows, a couple of dairy cows, a garden that grew a lot of different crops. You know, that's all fine and dandy. But looking around St. Pete, I just don't see a whole lot of places where we're going to put that. And so if all the nice people up and down the beach here want to be able to have their own personal Jersey cow and a few things, I mean, it's not going to work if we're going to continue to feed our nation and our world. And so that's part of the awareness campaign too, that in a world where we spend 7% of disposable income and Japan's spending 20% of disposable income, then you're not going to return to a world where every beef operation has someone where they know the name of every cow. And that's a cultural distinction and an awareness issue that's going to be kind of always with us. Last month's National Geographic on the end of cheap food, outstanding article that really reminds us all of what a success, I mean, it doesn't say this, but it's what's not said, you know, what a success American agriculture has been. But it talks about that if there's not another green revolution, that we really are facing the Malthusian crisis with the explosion in the population in India and China, and not only the explosion in the population, but the shift in their diet. And so if the Chinese population increases meat consumption 5% a year for the next 25 years, and every pound of meat requires 5 pounds of grain, and we're already siphoning grain into gas pumps, we've got a real food shortage globally. And you know, last summer was the first time in my lifetime that I remember Americans even mentioning what food costs. When my